My 26th birthday dinner turned out to be a night that would redefine everything. We were at a restaurant Harrison chose, not my top pick, but I was just glad he'd remembered my birthday at all this year. My best friends, Rebecca and Liliana, were there too. Initially, it felt like a typical celebration. Drinks, appetizers, the usual. But Harrison kept excusing himself to the restroom, almost every 15 minutes. During one of his frequent disappearances, I noticed Rebecca's expression change as she scrolled on her phone. She quickly showed something to Eliana, and they both froze. When I asked what was going on, they tried to brush it off. "It's nothing," Rebecca insisted, quickly tucking her phone away. "Just some silly social media drama." Harrison returned to the table, all smiles. He kissed my cheek and asked why everyone looked so somber. I smoothly replied that we were just debating dessert options. He chuckled, telling me to pick anything I wanted since it was my special day, babe. All through dinner, Harrison was overly affectionate, constantly draping his arm around me and snapping selfies for his Instagram, captioning them with "birthday girl in my world," complete with heart emojis. But on the drive back to his apartment, my mind replayed Rebecca's strange reaction and Harrison's recent behavior, distant. He was glued to his phone and always canceling plans at the last minute. His family had been struggling since his dad lost his job last year. My own father, who owns a distribution company, had given Harrison a job, paying him far more than he deserved, simply because he believed Harrison made me happy. For nearly a year, my dad had even covered Harrison's rent when he was short. Back at his apartment, Harrison announced a special birthday surprise. I told him I was tired, which clearly annoyed him. He accused me of being ungrateful after all the effort he'd put into my birthday. Later, once Harrison was asleep, I texted Rebecca, "Show me what you saw." The typing indicator appeared instantly, then stopped, then started again. Finally, her message came through. "Are you sure? It's bad?" My reply was simple, "Just show me." Seconds later, the link arrived. With trembling hands, I clicked it. There it was, Harrison's secret TikTok account. The one he swore he didn't have, claiming TikTok was stupid and for kids. It featured an entire series titled "Rating My Girlfriend's Friends," with 6 videos. The most recent one had my face in the thumbnail, marked with a large red X. My heart pounded as I pressed play. Harrison's voice was crystal clear, and finally, "This is my girlfriend. I'm suffering. She's fat, ugly, and delusional. I'll only with her because her dad pays my bills. Look at this creature." The video was from our beach trip last month. I'd been so self-conscious in my bikini, yet Harrison had told me I looked beautiful. He'd taken smiling photos, praising me for facing my fears, and then he'd used those very same pictures to publicly humiliate me. The comments were even more sickening, filled with his friends' laughter. One read, "Bro, leave that whale," and Harrison had hearted it. Hundreds of similar comments followed, and he'd responded to every single one, agreeing and joining in the mockery. The video had 47,000 views. 47,000 people had watched him ridicule me. I looked at Harrison sleeping soundly beside me. This man who just hours earlier had told me he loved me. This man who had spent the past 3 years convincing me he cared. This man who had exploited my family's generosity, only to repay it by humiliating me online for social media attention. While he slept, I went through his phone. I found countless messages with his friends, all laughing at my expense. I found the dating apps he was actively using. Harrison lived in an apartment my dad owned, drove a car my dad helped him purchase, and had a job solely because of my dad. And all this time, he'd been creating videos about how unattractive I was, openly admitting he was just using me for money. The bitter irony was that I was the one who had initially persuaded my dad to help him. Could have woken him up right. Then screamed, cried, and thrown his phone at his deceitful face. But something held me back. I understood that if I confronted him immediately, he'd simply deny it, claim it was a joke, or accuse me of overreacting. Nothing would truly happen to him. He might lose me, but frankly, the videos made it clear he didn't even want me. The only real loss for him would be my dad's financial support. The next morning, I made him breakfast, as if nothing were amiss. I kissed him goodbye when he left for work. Then, I called Rebecca and Liliana. I told them I'd seen everything, and I made it clear I wasn't going to simply cry about it. I wasn't just going to break up with him. I wasn't just going to expose him. No. What Harrison had done to me demanded a far more imaginative response. I decided I needed a plan, not just any plan, but one that would make him deeply regret every single word he'd ever uttered about me. For the next 3 days, I immersed myself in researching Harrison's entire social media presence. It turned out raiding my girlfriend's friends was merely the beginning. He had accounts everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all under different aliases, yet unmistakably him. On each platform, he grumbled about being stuck with me, posted side-by-side comparisons of me with other hot girls, and essentially chronicled his exploitation of me and my family for financial gain. Rebecca and Elelina came over and helped me meticulously document everything. We downloaded every video and took screenshots of all the comments. There was even a dedicated group chat with his friends where they relentlessly mocked me, my weight, and even the way I spoke. They had a running joke calling Harrison's relationship, with me taking one for the team because my dad was his meal ticket. My father has always been fiercely protective, a single dad raising an only daughter. When I started dating Harrison, Dad was initially skeptical, but he eventually warmed up, seeing how happy Harrison seemed to make me. When Harrison's family faced financial hardship, I was the one who persuaded my dad to extend a helping hand. My dad trusted my judgment, and I had vouched for this individual who was secretly laughing at us behind our backs. I called my dad and asked him to meet for lunch, just the two of us. We met at his favorite steakhouse, and I could immediately tell he sensed something was wrong. I had intended to ease into the conversation, but the moment I saw his face, the way he looked at me with such profound love and concern, I couldn't hold it back any longer. I showed him everything: the videos, the comments, the messages. Watched my dad's expression shift from confusion to shock, then to a cold, steely anger I had never witnessed before. He remained silent for a long time, simply scrolling through screenshot after screenshot, video after video. Finally, he put down his phone, looked at me, and asked if I was okay. I told him the truth, that I wasn't, but I would be. I told him I wasn't going to let Harrison get away with this. Dad nodded slowly and then said something that truly surprised me. "Do whatever you need to do. I've got your back." My dad isn't just a wealthy man. He built his business from the ground up, weathered 3 recessions, and battled competitors who tried to ruin him. He's the type of man who knows precisely how to deal with those who betray him. And Harrison had betrayed us both. We devised a plan, a meticulously crafted strategy designed to make Harrison regret ever believing he could exploit us. The first step was straightforward. Dad would transfer Harrison to the warehouse across town, meaning longer hours, harder work, and less pay. When Harrison questioned it, Dad simply cited budget cuts at the main office, nothing personal, just business. The second step involved the apartment. Harrison had technically signed a lease with my dad's property management company. I reviewed it with Dad's lawyer and discovered Harrison had violated multiple terms. Unauthorized subletting, he'd been renting the second bedroom to his friend Vincent without our knowledge. Property damage, holes in the walls covered by posters, and even keeping a pet snake, despite the lease explicitly prohibiting pets. But we didn't evict him immediately. That would be too transparent. Instead, the property management company issued a notice about routine maintenance on all units, requiring daily access for the next 2 weeks, sometimes with very short notice. I knew Harrison detested people in his personal space, and this would undoubtedly drive him insane. The third step. My dad called in the car loan. Harrison had missed 2 payments, a fact he'd concealed from me, which meant the bank could demand immediate full repayment. Harrison naturally didn't have that kind of money. He'd be forced to beg my dad for help, which, of course, my dad would refuse. All of this unfolded within the first week after my birthday. Harrison remained completely oblivious to my knowledge. I continued to act like the perfectly normal, loving, and supportive girlfriend, all while observing his life slowly begin to crumble. Complained incessantly about the job transfer, claiming he couldn't understand why my dad was doing this. To him, I looked him directly in the eyes and suggested, maybe Dad's just trying to help you develop new skills. Perhaps this is a good opportunity to prove yourself. Harrison nodded. seemingly convinced, as if my dad was still looking out for his best interests. He griped about the maintenance crews, saying they were showing up at inconvenient times and rummaging through his belongings. I casually suggested, maybe you should tidy up a bit, and perhaps get rid of that snake that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. His face when I mentioned the snake was absolutely priceless. He had no clue I knew about it. He then complained about the car loan, calling the bank unreasonable, and asked if I could speak to my dad about helping him out. I told him I'd think about it, then intentionally changed the subject, leaving him in suspense. Rebecca and Liliana checked in daily, concerned I might lose my composure and confront him. But honestly, witnessing Harrison slowly grasp that his seemingly perfect life was crumbling was far more gratifying than any shouting match could have been. By the end of the second week, Harrison was a wreck, exhausted from the warehouse work, stressed by the apartment inspections, and panicking over the car loan. He began to be short with me, snapping over trivial matters. But then he'd catch himself, remembering he needed to keep me happy, to keep me believing he loved me. That's when we initiated phase 2. One day when Harrison came over, I accidentally left my laptop open. On the screen was an email from my dad discussing revisions to his will. The email casually mentioned me taking charge of the family business someday, a trust fund that would become active when I turned 30. Of course, none of it was true. My dad and I had fabricated the email together, but Harrison didn't know that. That night, Harrison was suddenly incredibly attentive. He made dinner, massaged my shoulders, and told me how proud he was of me, claiming he'd always known I'd eventually take over the family business. I smiled and thanked him, all the while picturing the greedy thoughts swirling in his head. The following day, I brought up the idea of us moving in together. I suggested we find our own place, independent of my dad's help, somewhere we could truly begin our life together. Harrison's face immediately showed panic. He started making excuses about his job and financial situation, claiming it wasn't a good time. I pressed him slightly, feigning hurt, asking if he didn't envision a future with me. He quickly backpedaled, insisting he absolutely wanted a future with me and that moving in together would be amazing. Then he suggested we might consider using one of my dad's properties instead of finding a new place, perhaps that larger luxury apartment downtown that Dad had just renovated. I told him I'd think about it and watched him visibly relax. I was convinced he'd cleverly avoided a difficult situation. What Harrison didn't realize was that I had already moved most of my belongings out of his apartment. Everything I'd left there. Over the years, clothes, makeup, books, even the special coffee machine I'd bought him for Christmas, which he never used, since he secretly hated coffee, was gone. Rebecca and Liliana had helped me pack it all up during the day while he was at work. I was also meticulously documenting everything, secretly filming videos when he wasn't looking, recording our conversations and making detailed notes of every lie he told me, every instance he pretended affection, while I knew he was ridiculing me to his friends. The warehouse transfer served another strategic purpose. It isolated Harrison from his work friends, the very ones who commented on his videos and knew the truth. I asked my dad to keep an eye on him, and he reported back that Harrison was completely ostracized at the warehouse. Nobody wanted to associate with the boss's daughter's boyfriend. They all suspected he was a corporate spy. Harrison's car situation rapidly deteriorated. Without my dad's financial assistance, and with his reduced salary, he simply couldn't make the payments. The bank sent a final notice. In his desperation, Harrison tried to bypass me entirely, showing up at my dad's office unannounced. My dad handled it flawlessly. He listened patiently to Harrison's tale of financial hardship, his declarations of love for me, his desire for a future together, and his feigned embarrassment about asking for help again. Dad nodded sympathetically, then delivered a brilliant line. "If you truly love my daughter and want a future with her, prove it. Propose to her. Make a commitment. Then we'll discuss financial assistance." That night, Harrison came to me practically buzzing with excitement. He told me he'd had a great talk with my dad, who had given him man-to-man advice about our relationship. When I asked what kind of advice, Harrison cryptically said he didn't want to spoil the surprise. Then he started asking about my ring preferences, traditional or modern styles. I played along perfectly, feigning excitement, even showing him pictures of rings I supposedly liked. The next day, Harrison suggested we have dinner at the same restaurant where we'd celebrated my birthday, claiming he wanted to make up for being distracted that night. I agreed, secretly knowing precisely what he was planning. I called Rebecca and Liliana, informing them that Phase 3 was about to unfold sooner than anticipated. Harrison was going to propose, not out of love for me, but because he believed it would resolve his financial woes. They were understandably furious on my behalf, but I calmly assured them I had everything completely under control. On the day of the proposal dinner, I spent hours preparing. My hair and makeup were flawless. I wore the red dress Harrison had once, in one of his videos, said made me look almost as hot as Liliana. I made sure I looked absolutely perfect. Harrison picked me up, complimenting me with a nervous tremor in his voice. He kept touching the pocket of his jacket, where I presumed the ring was hidden. He'd been strangely insistent on driving, even though his car was on the verge of being repossessed any day. Now I understood why. He wanted to orchestrate the perfect proposal moment. At the restaurant, Harrison was visibly sweating, constantly checking his phone, and seemed incredibly distracted. When I asked if everything was all right, he insisted everything was perfect. He ordered champagne and began reminiscing about how we met, our first date, and all these cherished memories. The entire time, my mind was fixated on those videos, him calling me fat, ugly, and a creature, proclaiming to the world he was suffering by being with me, and all the cruel comments from his friends that he'd laughed at and encouraged. Just as dessert arrived, Harrison got down on one knee, pulled out a small box, and began his rehearsed speech. How much he loved me. How he couldn't imagine life without me. How he wanted us to be together forever. I looked at his seemingly earnest face, then at the cheap ring he'd likely bought on credit because he was broke. I saw the people around us starting to notice and smile, believing they were witnessing a beautiful, romantic moment. And then I said exactly what I had planned to say all along. No. Harrison's face froze. He clearly hadn't anticipated that. He tried to laugh it off, assuming I was joking. I wasn't. I said it again, louder this time. No. Harrison stood up, confused and utterly embarrassed, asking if we could discuss this somewhere private. I refused again, stating I was perfectly comfortable having this conversation right here, right now. Then I took out my phone, pulled up the TikTok video, turned the volume all the way up, and pressed play. Harrison's voice boomed, and finally, "This is my girlfriend. Yes, I'm suffering. She's fat, ugly, and delusional. I'm only with her because her dad pays my bills." Look at this creature. His face drained of color, then flushed crimson. He lunged for my phone, but I quickly pulled it away. "Don't ever touch me again," I commanded. Chaos erupted immediately. People at the neighboring tables began whispering. The server hovered, looking ready to intervene. Harrison's eyes were wide and frantic, darting from me to my phone to the exit as if calculating his escape. He hissed at me. "You're making a scene. We're embarrassing yourself." "Let's just talk outside," I firmly replied. "No, I'm done pretending." I told him I knew absolutely everything, every video, every message, every disgusting joke. And by the way, I'd already moved out, taking back every single item of mine he had ever touched. I informed him he'd lost his meal ticket, his easy ride, and that the only thing he'd ever be remembered for was being a coward who mocked the one person who had always supported him. He stormed out, leaving me with the check and the ring box. The fallout began that very night. My phone exploded with calls, texts, then voicemails filled with rage, then desperation, then threats. I blocked his number. He tried Instagram, then Snapchat, then even emailed me at my old college address. I blocked every single attempt. He tried leaving notes at my apartment, but I had already instructed building security to deny him access. He called my dad's office, feigning work-related inquiries. But my dad had already told the receptionist to screen every call. Rebecca and Liliana came over, eager to celebrate, but all I wanted was to shower and scrub the lingering scent of him off my skin. I spent hours scrolling through every message, every post, every old video, deleting them one by one. My goal was to erase him, not just from my life, but from the past 3 years of my memory. Over the following week, things escalated. Harrison began showing up at places he knew I frequented. My favorite coffee shop, the grocery store near my office, even the gym. He'd loiter outside, pretending to text, feigning accidental encounters. He'd attempt to talk, to apologize, but his words were always the same. I'm sorry you're upset. I'm sorry you misunderstood. I'm sorry you saw those things, but you know I love you. You know I need you. No, I can't do this without you. I never gave him the satisfaction of a response. I walked past him as if he were invisible. Evening, as Rebecca and I were leaving a bar, we spotted his car idling across the street. I exchanged a glance with her, and without a word, I pulled out my phone and began filming. I walked directly up to his window and asked if he was lost. He looked startled, then angry, before trying to play it off, as if he were waiting for a friend. I told him to leave, or I'd call the police. He started to protest, but Rebecca was already on the phone. He sped away, tires screeching, and that was the last time I saw him in person for quite a while. However, the online harassment didn't cease. He began posting vague, cryptic messages about fake people, betrayal, and women who ruin good men. His friends joined in, attempting to DM and harass me, but I had already secured all my accounts. I changed my phone number and wiped my social media presence clean. I wasn't scared. I was simply finished. My dad offered to hire a security guard for a while, but I declined. I told him I dealt with far worse than a pathetic man addicted to TikTok. Meanwhile, I was collaborating closely with my dad's lawyer. We sent Harrison an official notice detailing his lease violations, the pet snake, the unauthorized subletting, and the property damage. He had 30 days to vacate, but the maintenance checks continued, always with minimal warning and at the most inconvenient times. He began calling the property management company, yelling and demanding they cease harassing him, but he only received polite apologies and reminders that he had, in fact, signed the lease. He even tried to get Vincent, his secret roommate, to fight on his behalf, but Vincent refused to get involved. Suddenly, all those friends who had gleefully laughed at his videos were nowhere to be seen. His car was repossessed 3 weeks after the proposal fiasco. I didn't even know until Rebecca texted me a picture of Harrison standing on the curb, arms crossed, watching the tow truck haul it away. I saved that photo. Sometimes I look at it when I need a reminder of what losing truly looks like. Was the final domino to fall. My dad transferred Harrison to the graveyard shift at the warehouse, which meant brutal hours, no sunlight, and the most undesirable tasks. He tried to complain, but no one listened. Everyone knew who he was by then, and no one wanted to be caught speaking to him. The only reason he retained the job at all was because my dad wanted to keep him within reach long enough to execute the final stage of our plan. So, while he frantically scrambled to keep his life from collapsing, I was meticulously building my case. I had everything. Screenshots, videos, emails, text logs. I met with the lawyer every other day, assembling a file so thick it barely fit into a folder. Rebecca and Elialana helped me sort through it all, organizing by date, platform, and level of cruelty. I saw things in those group chats that I can never unsee. Jokes about my body, my voice, my family, even cruel remarks about my mom, who passed away when I was a child. That particular discovery nearly broke me, but I refused to give him the satisfaction. My dad was absolutely relentless. Every time Harrison attempted a clever maneuver like sneaking in through the building's back entrance or having friends call the company to complain about harassment, my dad shut it down. He had cameras installed in the hallways, changed the locks, and ensured that only trusted individuals had access. Harrison tried to threaten a lawsuit, but our paperwork was airtight. All those years he spent mocking my dad for being old-fashioned, and paranoiac suddenly didn't seem so amusing. The apartment was the final domino to fall. 2 days before, his 30-day notice expired. I received a text from Liana. He's moving out. I drove by slowly just to see for myself. Harrison was dragging trash bags to the curb, completely alone. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if he felt someone watching. I thought that would be the end of it. But if you believe someone like Harrison just disappears, you clearly don't understand narcissists. 2 nights later, I came home to find the words "gold-digging whale" scrawled in Sharpie on my apartment door. I actually laughed. I took a picture, texted it to my dad and the property manager, then spent the next hour scrubbing it off. I never called the police. I wanted him to know I knew it was him, and I wanted him to understand it hadn't worked. I wasn't scared or even angry. I was simply bored. He attempted to escalate further, started messaging my dad, fabricating claims that I had cheated on him, stolen from him, and was the abusive one. My dad didn't even bother to reply. The lawyer simply added each message to our growing file. Harrison's final desperate attempt was a handwritten letter, left at my office front desk, pleading for just one more conversation. The receptionist, knowing the situation, discarded it before I even saw it. Liana and Rebecca worried he might try something worse. I assured them I wasn't concerned. I adjusted my routines, kept my phone on me, and never walked home alone. I wasn't naive, but I also refused to let fear dictate my life. Approximately 3 weeks after his eviction, I received a call from the warehouse manager, a friend of my dad's whom I'd known since childhood. He informed me that Harrison hadn't shown up for his last 4 shifts, hadn't called in, and hadn't collected his final paycheck. They had boxed up his locker and found it filled with junk. Empty energy drink cans, torn up notes, and some old photos of us from when we first started dating. The manager asked if I wanted them. Throw it all out, I told him. Then Monday morning, as I walked into my office, there he was. Harrison, sitting on the curb outside the building, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Please forgive me." He looked absolutely terrible. 3 days worth of stubble, bloodshot eyes, and trembling hands. He didn't even look up as I walked past, just kept staring at the ground, clutching his pathetic sign as if it would change anything. The receptionist caught my eye and mouthed, "He's been here every morning for 3 days." I simply shrugged. "If he comes inside," I instructed her, "call security," she replied. Already done. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began my workday. By lunchtime, he was gone, but the sign remained, propped against the trash can outside. I took a picture and texted it to Rebecca, Liana, and my dad, adding, just in case you wanted a laugh, that's where things stand for now. I don't know what Harrison will attempt next, but I'm certain that whatever it is, he will never receive my forgiveness, my attention, or another chance. A part of me wondered if seeing Harrison outside my office would mark the end that he'd finally hit, rock bottom, and vanish. But of course, that's not how individuals like him operate. If you've ever been exploited, humiliated, and then stalked by someone convinced you owe them forgiveness, you understand that a sign like that is never the conclusion. It's merely the beginning of a new, even more pathetic game. I kept anticipating his next escalation, but honestly, I believe he had run out of options. Still, I wasn't foolish. I kept my phone on me at all times, checked the lobby before leaving, and instructed the receptionist to remain vigilant. I wasn't giving him an inch, not after everything he'd done. The following week felt like a strange limbo. Harrison didn't reappear, at least not where I could see him. But I started receiving messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old college friends, distant cousins, even a high school acquaintance I barely remembered. "Hey, is everything okay? Did something happen with you and Harrison? Someone saw him outside your work?" I even got a message from Vincent, who hadn't contacted me since this whole ordeal began. It was a rambling wall of text about how Harrison was in a bad place and suggested I'd just meet with him for 5 minutes, so he could have closure. I blocked him without reading another word. I was done giving any of those people my time, energy, or empathy. If you're still friends with a man who built his reputation on shaming the woman who saved his life, then you're dead to me, period. The official eviction process concluded. The apartment was a disaster. Holes in the walls, beer stains on the carpet, and a lingering stench, as if something had died in the vents. The property management company charged Harrison for every single penny. My dad chuckled when he saw the invoice, calling it karma. I agreed, though I didn't truly care about the money. What mattered was that he was finally, officially out. One day at work, I received a call from the warehouse. The manager said Harrison had come in to collect his last paycheck and tried to start an argument about being wrongfully terminated. The manager simply told him, "You were never terminated. You just stopped showing up." Harrison yelled and ranted about my dad, claiming he was being set up and deserved better. The manager said he just handed him the check, watched him leave, and then locked the door behind him. I thanked him for the update and asked if there was anything else I needed to do. He just laughed. "Just keep living your life, kid." By the time my birthday came around again, I realized I hadn't thought about Harrison in days. Not even when I drove past our old restaurant. Not even when I saw his old car parked on the street. Well, not his anymore. I took a deep breath. I went to dinner with my friends and my dad, letting them toast me and share embarrassing stories. I let myself laugh until my stomach ached. I wore the red dress, the one Harrison always claimed was too much. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I genuinely liked. Every so often I'll still get a strange DM or a friend request from some random account, but it doesn't bother me. I forward it to the lawyer, block, and move on. I know Harrison is out there somewhere, probably still spinning some sob story about how I ruined his life, but I'm not worried. I know who I am, and I know exactly what he is. I hope he remembers every single thing he did and understands that he lost the one person who truly cared. I hope every time he sees my name, he's reminded that he's nothing more than a footnote in my story, a cautionary tale, not a tragedy,